time to get into Coverstitch. I want to show you in your manual how you're going to read through the little guide that comes with the machine. So first off, you're going to find the stitch. We're going to do Coverstitch triple. It does show you which page, if you want to follow for paths of threading, what it's going to look like, what fabrics it can be done on. First thing you need to do is turn the machine to J. That's right over here. So go ahead and turn it all the way from A to J. And then notice this. This is where the needles that we'll be using. We're going to be using the 3 needle holes that are much more forward on our serger than the serger ones that are kind of the 2 that are in the back. C, D, and E are what we're using. The next one is stitch length. So our stitch length knob is here. Cutting width is going to be disengaged. So that's why there's a little dash. This is differential feed. Just leave that at normal. That's way back on this part here. So I'm going to set that at normal. The stitch finger is going to be pulled to R. I'm going to show you why when we go to the next setting. This is for the 2-thread converter. It says no because of course we're not using that at all. And then we need to set up from serger to Coverstitch. The last part is with which colors we will be threading. For example, for all 3-thread Coverstitch or triple stitched, we will be using all 4 threads, but the blue is going to follow the navy blue threading path into the Coverstitch looper area. So I'm going to show you how that works. So as we go through, we're going to go through all of these in each different videos, the Coverstitch wide, Coverstitch narrow, and the wonderful chain stitch. So I'm going to set this aside. The last thing we did was a 2-thread serged edge. So I'm going to just take all the threads out of the machine because we're not going to be using them in this particular area at all. So this is a Coverstitch looper, the blue one. We're going to put we have a left needle, middle needle, and the final right needle. So we'll actually be using all 4 of those threads. And now I'm going to zoom us in so we can actually see where these needles are going to be and then where our loopers are. So I'm going to just lift up my presser foot, pull out any remaining threads, and then we are going to set up for the Coverstitch. We're going to go ahead, same path from down below, just with one extra note, and I'm going to go ahead and do this right now while we're zoomed out, is to the right needle that we'll be using is a green thread. Green thread is typically our upper looper, but did you notice there's a little silver bar right here? And that's because it's going to travel here and it's going to come over as a needle thread this time. And the tensions, of course, for this is changed because we're on J, for these to be needle tensions and this to be a Coverstitch looper. If you notice right now, we have one needle that's left from the serger side of this, and that's way back here for A and B. But when we do Coverstitch, you notice these 3 long ovals? That is where the needles for cover stitching are going to be placed. That will give you a reference point. So we'll loosen these. I'm going to move this one up. Doesn't matter which needle you put in first here. Oh, if this needle doesn't ever want to come out, loosen A, and that will drop it out because sometimes one tightens the other a little bit more and it just doesn't release. But I am going to turn those nice and tight. And when I go back to serging, I will want to make sure that I loosen those quite a bit. So what I do is I put the needle down into one of those ovals. So right now I'm in the right oval. I'm going to slide that up, loosen. That's E. This needle's for E. Slide that one in. Slide down. Now you're probably kind of noticing, oh gosh, this takes a lot of changing over to do Coverstitch. Well, tell you the truth, usually when you do Coverstitch for something, it's the last thing you do. It's the hems, it's done at the end. So do all your serging first, and then maybe do all the serging on 2 or 3 projects. And then when you switch to Coverstitch, you go ahead and Coverstitch all the hems on all the projects. So saving you a lot of time than going back and forth 3 different times. So I am getting out one more needle from my little accessory box. And that one's going here. You're noticing that the tips of these needles are all at different heights. This last one here, this is the far left one. That one is the highest. And you'll also see that these needles have a place that you'll actually be able to see right up here at the top. They have a little home, and you can see them when they come up, so you know you have them as high as they're supposed to go. So I'm 1, 2, 3, kind of at an angle from left down to right, and now I'm going to go ahead and get this threaded. I happen to have the green one already in, so we're going to just go ahead and thread green one first, and then we'll do the other ones. Let me do this. Let me go ahead and do a green one because this is pretty similar to the serger part. We'll use the needle threader. Hallelujah for a needle threader when we have 3 needles to do. I tend to use more of a 2-thread cover stitch most of the time, but definitely is nice to know how to do it with all 3. So for the cover stitch looper, we're going to go ahead and start with that one over here. We're just coming straight down just like normal, but this time instead of following the light blue paths, we're going to follow the navy blue paths. They're very similar, but they're more, you might say, in front of everything. So here's where we're going to go. I'm going to just make sure that there's nothing, one more in here that I just can't see. There sure is. It's right back in this area. And this is the cover stitch looper. The cover stitch looper is, you never thread that when you're actually in the serger mode because you're threading the 2 that are closer to where the needles are. You're always threading the loopers closest to where the needles. So now that we have the needles up front, that's why we will be using the cover stitch looper that's closest to them. There's just one, so it is kind of like a lower looper. And where's that little guide? Here he is. There's one way back underneath. That one's going to be hard to show on the camera, so definitely find where that is in your book. And then this one also has, so we're going to go ahead and thread the eye of the cover stitch looper first. There is a place in the back, just like your lower looper, that needs to be threaded. So we're going to go here. And this little lever down right here is going to take that thread to the back. So hook it into that little arm with the little V-cut, lift it all the way back until it stops, and once again that thread will lay in that groove for the lower or the cover stitch looper. Now here's what you're going to do. This will look a little funny, but it works. All you need to do is take your scissors and cut the thread about 3-4 inches from the tip, and you're going to just leave that dangle for when we go to start. So I'm going to just go ahead and I'm going to stop talking, and we're going to rethread or continue threading the other 2 needles just like before. So I just noticed I threaded my last needle with my presser foot down. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of floss the thread back and forth and make sure it sinks far enough down into those tension discs. So when you're sewing, and before we start, we're going to just have these individual threads. You can have them, I'm going to just put them all out to the side. So those are the 3 needle threads. We've got our cover stitch looper thread just hanging down below. We're ready to test this out. I'm going to just take the fabric, fold it in half. We're going to just run a quick test mode here. Setting the fabric, did you notice I put the fabric all the way in so the needles come down on fabric. This is more like a sewing machine now. So fabric and needles are always together. We're going to stop when we get to the end, but let's just go ahead and do some stitching here. Stitch length is usually moved to about 3, so just it makes it a little easier for what you're doing. Here's the trick for getting it out. So stop before you go off the edge. That's going to be best. As your needles come up, bring them all the way to the highest position. Lift up your foot. And I usually take some small pair of scissors, and I'm going to slide them underneath the needles towards me. That with the presser foot up, the tensions are released. It might still be a little bit tight, but give them a little pull. And I've got all 3 of the threads here. I'm going to clip them. When I clip them, that releases them. Now my lower or my cover stitch looper is still underneath and connected, so I will have to do that. But you know what this does is it actually allows and connects and locks this last stitch down here with that little trick of swiping those needle threads towards you, snipping them, and then pulling it out the back. Love it. So here we have our cover stitch in 3 colors. I kind of like that. We have the yellow, the red, and the green as our needles, and then our cover stitch is on the back. Okay, so now let's take a look at how this is going to actually work when you're doing a hem. Take your fabric, you'll have pressed this in place, and so it doesn't move. If you want to pin it, you can do that. Now, you do need to sew from the top side, and you're like, well, wait, how do I know if I'm where I need to be? First off, you'll actually be able to feel it. When you slide it underneath, you can feel where the thick area is and where that bump is, where it goes down to a single layer. You also have the throat plate with lines here. So if you know you have a 2-inch line, you can set this up for 2 inches and follow along. Next, with your fingers in the guides of these little marks on the front of the foot, you can feel these little bumps. Since we have all 3 of the needles in running here, I want to run the raw edge underneath right in between where all the needles are. So that way we are covering that edge. Okay, so we'll sew all the way to the end, bring our needles up, lift our presser foot up, take our scissors, swipe it underneath, clip all 3 loops, pull out the back, and 1 cutter back there. And now, see how we've covered up the edge? That is definitely what it's all about as a cover stitch. If this was stretchy fabric, we would have the beautiful stretch that the cover stitch gives.